What happens when destiny is denied? For Celeste Ashwood, life had always been a study in shadows. Born an Omega to the Silverpine Pack, she'd learned early that her status meant invisibility, or worse, visibility of the wrong kind. While the Alphas and Betas trained in combat and strategy, she'd been relegated to the kitchens, the healing wards, the spaces where power didn't tread. Her parents, Marcus and Alara, had always watched her with something she couldn't name. Not quite love, not quite fear. Something heavier, like guilt wrapped in silence. But tonight was the lunar ceremony, and tonight, everything was supposed to change. For 3 years, she'd felt the pull. The mate bond, they called it. That invisible thread the moon goddess herself wove between destined souls. Celeste had felt it the moment she'd turned 18, on a golden cord that tugged her heart toward Damon Blackthorne, the Pack's alpha heir. She'd hidden it, of course, and Omega didn't speak of such things, didn't dare dream that fate could be so generous. But the bond didn't lie, and tonight, under the full moon, all bonds were revealed. What she didn't know, what no one had told her, was that some bonds are revealed only to be destroyed. And what happened next, no one was prepared for. The ceremony ground sprawled at the heart of Silverpine territory, a circular clearing where ancient stones marked the boundaries between Pack law and moon goddess decree. Hundreds of wolves filled the space, their excitement crackling through the cool autumn air like static before a storm. Celeste stood at the edge, her simple gray dress a stark contrast to the elaborate finery worn by the higher ranks. Her hair, the color of honey touched by moonlight, hung in loose waves past her shoulders. She'd tried to tame it, but her hands had trembled too much. The scent of anticipation hung heavy. Pine smoke from the ceremonial fires, the musk of hundreds of wolves in close proximity, and underneath it all, something sweet and sharp, like fear disguised as hope. Her wolf stirred within, restless and eager. "Tonight," it whispered, "tonight we claim what's ours." Celeste pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the rapid thunder of her heartbeat. The mate mark would appear when bonds were acknowledged. She'd seen it happen before, watched as glowing symbols bloomed on skin where destined mates touched, intricate patterns unique to each pair. Some said the marks told stories. Others claimed they were the goddess's signature, a proof that some things were too sacred for mortals to break. They were wrong about that last part. Elder Thorn stepped forward, his silver hair gleaming in the firelight. He raised his staff, and silence fell like a blade. "Children of the moon," his voice rolled across the assembly. "We gather under her gaze to honor the bonds she has woven. Tonight, those who have felt the pull will step forward. Tonight, destiny speaks." One by one, pairs emerged from the crowd. Celeste watched as marks flared to life, a spiral of stars for the Beta sun and his mate, twin crescents for two warriors who'd circled each other for months. Each revelation brought cheers, howls of celebration that echoed through the territory. Then Damon stepped into the circle, saw he was everything an alpha should be. 6.5 feet of raw power packed into a frame that moved with predatory grace. His dark hair caught the firelight, and his eyes, the color of molten amber, swept across the crowd with the confidence of someone who'd never known doubt. His scent hit her like a physical force. Forest loam after rain, the sharp bite of embers, ozone before a lightning strike, and underneath it all, cold steel. The bond flared, white-hot and undeniable. Celeste gasped, her hand flying to her chest as the golden thread pulled taut. Their eyes met across the circle. For one heartbeat, she saw recognition. For one perfect, fragile moment, she thought she saw wonder. Then his expression shuddered, going cold as winter stone. "No," Damon said. and the single word cracked through the silence like breaking ice. Ma Celeste took a step forward before she could stop herself. "Damon, the bond, I said no." His voice was harder now, edged with something that made her wolf whimper and curl inward. He turned to Elder Thorne, to her parents standing rigid at the edge of the circle, to the hundreds of witnesses whose excitement had curdled into shock. "I, Damon Blackthorne, future alpha of the Silverpine Pack, reject the bond with Celeste Ashwood. I reject it before the Moon Goddess, before this pack, before all who bear witness." The words were formal, ancient, binding. The bond didn't just break, it shattered. Pain exploded through Celeste's chest, white-hot and all-consuming. She'd heard that rejection hurt, but hearing couldn't prepare her for this. It felt like someone had reached into her ribcage and ripped out her heart while it was still beating. Her wolf howled, a sound of pure agony that only she could hear, thrashing against the walls of her mind as the golden thread dissolved into ash. She fell to her knees, her hands digging into the earth as wave after wave of agony rolled through her. Somewhere distant, she heard her mother cry out, heard her father's sharp command to stay back. "An Omega?" Damon's voice cut through her pain, and she forced her head up to see him address the crowd. "The Moon Goddess would pair me with an Omega. I am meant to lead this pack, to make us strong, to forge alliances with the great packs of the North. What use is a mate who can't fight, who can't command, who brings nothing but weakness?" Each word was a fresh knife between her ribs. "There are laws," Elder Thorne said, his voice shaking. "So the mate bond is sacred. The bond is broken." Damon's amber eyes were merciless as he looked down at Celeste, still kneeling in the dirt. "She is nothing to me. She will never be Luna of this pack." Then he turned to someone in the crowd, and Celeste's world tilted further off its axis. Seraphina Redwood emerged from the shadows, her auburn hair gleaming like blood under the moonlight, her green eyes glittering with triumph. She was beautiful, deadly, a beta female with warrior's training and an alpha's ambition. Her scent, cinnamon and iron and something darker, like blood on snow, washed over the gathering. "This is my choice," Damon announced, taking Seraphina's hand. "A mate worthy of an alpha." The pack erupted. Some howled their approval, those who'd always believed in the old ways, that strength should pair with strength. Others stood silent, shock or disapproval etched on their faces. But none stepped forward to challenge him. None except Celeste, who somehow, impossibly, found the strength to stand. "You're making a mistake," she whispered, but her voice carried in the sudden hush. Blood trickled from her nose, and she could taste copper on her tongue. The pain of rejection was still eating through her, but beneath it, something else stirred. Something old and vast and angry. "The bond. The goddess doesn't make mistakes." "Guards," Damon said flatly. Two massive warriors stepped forward, their hands closing on her arms like iron shackles. Celeste tried to struggle, but her body was failing, the rejection trauma shutting down her systems one by one. Her vision swam. "Remove her from pack territory," Damon commanded. "She is no longer one of us. She is rogue." The word sent a collective gasp through the crowd. Rogue. It meant exile. It meant any wolf could challenge her, hunt her, kill her without consequence. In the dead of winter, with the northern storms approaching, it was a death sentence. "Please." Celeste turned toward where her parents stood, her voice breaking. "Please, don't let them." But Marcus Ashwood looked away, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Alara covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. "Mom," Celeste whispered, but her mother couldn't meet her eyes. The guards dragged her from the ceremony ground. The last thing she saw before the trees swallowed them was the crowd parting, allowing her exile without protest. The last thing she heard was Seraphina's laugh, bright and cruel as shattered glass. The last thing she felt was the mate mark that should have bloomed on her skin, burning as it died, leaving nothing but ash and the phantom pain of what should have been. They released her at the northern border, where Silverpine territory ended and the wild lands began. The head guard, a scarred beta named Marcus, looked almost apologetic as he stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, this isn't right." Then they were gone, melting back into the trees, leaving her alone in the dark with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart still bleeding from wounds that would never fully heal. The first snowflake landed on her cheek, cold as mercy, and Celeste looked up at the sky. Storm clouds were rolling in from the north, heavy and dark with promise. She could already feel the temperature dropping. Aunt could smell the blizzard on the wind. She had maybe an hour before the storm hit. No shelter. No supplies. No pack to call for help. Celeste took a shaking breath and started walking north into the wilderness, into the storm, into whatever ending waited for her there. Behind her, the ceremony continued. Ahead of her, the wild land stretched endless and uncaring, and deep within her, where the bond had broken and her wolf had retreated into shocked silence, something else began to stir. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Something that had been waiting. The blizzard hit with the fury of a vengeful goddess. Within 20 minutes, Celeste couldn't see more than 3 feet in front of her face. The wind howled like wolves denied their prey, tearing at her thin dress and driving snow into her eyes until every blink felt like sandpaper. Her hair whipped around her, already heavy with ice. The cold was absolute, seeping past skin and muscle to settle in her bones with cruel efficiency. "Shift," her wolf begged, finally finding voice again. "Shift. We can survive this." But when Celeste reached for her transformation, she found nothing. The rejection had severed something fundamental. Her wolf was there, could feel its presence like a ghost in her mind, but the bridge between them was broken. She couldn't shift, couldn't access her enhanced healing, her supernatural endurance. She was as helpless as a human. The thought should have terrified her more, but she was too cold for fear. Too cold for anything but the mechanical process of putting one foot in front of the other. Her feet had gone numb 10 minutes ago. She couldn't feel her hands. "This is it," she thought with strange clarity. "This is how I die." The old story said that freezing wasn't a bad way to go, that eventually the cold became warm, that you simply fell asleep and didn't wake up. Celeste had always wondered if that was true, or just something they told children to make winter less frightening. She was about to find out. Through the white curtain of snow, a shape emerged, dark and angular, almost dreamlike in its sudden appearance. A barn, she realized, old and half-collapsed, its roof sagging under years of neglect. But it had walls. It had shelter from the wind. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Celeste stumbled toward it, her legs barely responding to her commands. The door hung crooked on one hinge, and she had to shove it with her shoulder to create an opening wide enough to slip through. Inside, darkness and the smell of old hay and wood rot wrapped around her. It was barely warmer than outside, but the wind couldn't reach her here. She collapsed in the corner furthest from the door, pulling what loose hay she could find around herself like a pathetic blanket. Her body shook with violent tremors. Her teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue, tasting blood. The pain from the rejection was still there, a constant ache beneath the physical suffering. The phantom bond throbbed where it had been severed, and her wolf's grief was a living thing, pressing against her consciousness like a weight. I'm going to die, she realized, and the thought held no drama, no fear, just simple fact. I'm going to die here, and no one will ever know. A daemon will be Alpha, Seraphina will be Luna, and I'll be a cautionary tale they tell Omega pups. This is what happens when you reach above your station. Her eyes drifted closed. The cold was becoming warm, just like they said. She could feel herself slipping away, consciousness unraveling like thread from a spool. Somewhere very distant, she heard her mother's voice from when she was small, singing a lullaby about the moon goddess and her children. Somewhere even more distant, she felt her wolf curl around her, offering what comfort it could as they prepared to walk into the dark together. Then the howl shattered the night. It was massive, primal, the sound of something ancient and powerful announcing its presence to the world. Not close, maybe a mile away, maybe more, but clear despite the storm's rage. Celeste's eyes snapped open, and another howl answered the first, from a different direction. Then another, and another. Wolves, a pack, in the wild lands. Terror spiked through her, momentarily overriding the cold. Rogue wolves were dangerous, unpredictable, often driven mad by isolation. A pack of rogues was a nightmare, a force of savage chaos that even established packs feared. And she was helpless, unable to shift, unable to defend herself, bleeding weakness into the air like a beacon. The howls were getting closer. Celeste tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't respond. Tried to drag herself deeper into the barn, but her arms had no strength left. All she could do was huddle in her corner, pulling the hay around herself, as if it could hide her, as if it could protect her from what was coming. The door rattled. A shadow filled the opening, massive and dark against the white storm. Then another, and another. Celeste's heart hammered against her ribs as she counted them emerging from the blizzard, each one larger than any wolf she'd ever seen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wolves, and each of them could tear her apart without effort. The largest stepped forward, and Celeste got her first clear look at it. Her breath caught. It wasn't just large, it was impossible. Easily the size of a small horse, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the shadows. Its eyes glowed silver, not the amber or gold of normal wolves, but genuine silver, like moonlight, given form. Scars crisscrossed its muzzle and shoulders, testament to battles survived. Its scent rolled over her, aged oak and winter snow, pine forests under starlight, and the sharp clarity of a storm about to break. Those silver eyes found her, and Celeste stopped breathing. For a long moment, neither moved. The other wolves spread out, forming a loose circle around her corner, but not advancing, not threatening. They simply watched. The scarred leader took another step closer, its massive head lowering to her level. This close, she could see the intelligence in those eyes, the awareness that went far beyond animal instinct. Please, she thought, because she had no breath for words. Please, just make it quick. But the wolf didn't attack. Instead, it turned in a slow circle and laid down directly in front of her, its body forming a windbreak between her and the door. One by one, the others did the same, arranging themselves around the barn's perimeter. The smallest, though still larger than a normal alpha, moved closest, pressing against her left side. Another settled on her right. They were protecting her. Warmth began to seep back into her limbs, carried by the combined body heat of the massive wolves surrounding her. The trembling that had shaken her apart began to ease. Her heartbeat, which had been stuttering toward silence, steadied. Why? The word escaped her, barely a whisper, barely sound at all. The leader's head turned, those silver eyes finding hers again, and she could have sworn she saw it smile. Celeste woke to birdsong and the smell of pine. For several disorienting seconds, she couldn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then memory crashed back. The rejection, the blizzard, the barn, the impossible wolves. Her eyes flew open. Sunlight streamed through gaps in the barn's walls, painting stripes of gold across weathered wood. The storm had passed, leaving the world draped in fresh snow that sparkled like scattered diamonds. The cold was still present, but distant, manageable. The wolves were still there. All 10 of them lay in various states of repose around the barn, though she noticed that at least 3 had remained alert through the night, their eyes tracking every shadow beyond the door. Now, with morning's arrival, they watched her with unmistakable interest. The scarred leader rose, shaking snow from its dark fur. It moved toward her with deliberate steps, and Celeste's instincts screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But her body was still weak, and honestly, where would she go? Besides, they'd saved her life. The wolf stopped 3 feet away. Then, before her eyes, its form began to shimmer. Celeste had seen transformations countless times. Every werewolf learned to shift. But this was different. There was no violence in it, no snapping bones or tearing muscle. The wolf's form simply flowed, reality bending as fur became skin, paws became hands, mass redistributing with fluid grace, until a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was striking in the way scars and survival made people striking. Older than Damon by perhaps a decade, with dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, and those same impossible silver eyes. His face was all hard angles and sharp lines, with a jagged scar running from his left temple down to his jaw. He wore simple black clothing that seemed to materialize from the transformation itself, a level of control that took decades to master. His scent washed over her, the same aged oak and winter snow she'd noticed before, and something in her chest pulled tight. "You're awake," he said, and his voice was deep, rough-edged, the kind of voice that commanded attention without raising volume. "Good. We were beginning to worry." "Who?" Celeste's voice cracked, and she had to swallow and try again. "Who are you?" A slight smile touched his mouth, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "My name is Kieran Ashford, and these," he gestured to the other wolves, several of whom were beginning their own transformations, "are the Shadow Guard." One by one, the wolves shifted. Each transformation was as smooth and controlled as Kieran's had been, and each revealed warriors who looked like they'd walked out of legend. There was a woman with silver-white hair and eyes like chips of ice, a man whose bronze skin was marked with what looked like ritual tattoos. Another woman, this one with red hair the color of autumn leaves, and a smile that was all edges. Twins, identical down to the matching scars on their right cheeks. All of them massive, all of them powerful, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to something that looked almost like reverence. "Shadow Guard," Celeste repeated slowly. The name tugged at something in her memory, something old she'd heard as a child. That's just a story. A legend." "Most legends have roots in truth," said the silver-haired woman, her voice cool and precise. "I'm Lyra. That's Dante." She nodded to the tattooed man. "The twins are Finn and Fiona. The redhead is Arya. And the big one trying to be subtle while standing next to a beam is Marcus." One by one, they introduced themselves: Theron, Cassia, Bren, and finally, a young man who couldn't have been more than 25, with warm brown eyes and an apologetic smile. "Rowan," he said, "sorry about the dramatic entrance last night. We didn't mean to frighten you." "Frighten me?" Celeste laughed, and it came out slightly unhinged. "You saved my life. We did what we were meant to do." Kieran's silver eyes held hers, steady and unwavering. "We've been searching for you for a very long time, Celeste Ashwood." Ice ran down her spine. "How do you know my name?" "Because," Kieran said quietly, and something in his expression shifted. Anticipation? Maybe. Or relief. Or both. "We've been waiting for you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning she couldn't quite grasp. "I don't understand." Celeste's hands twisted in the remains of her dress. "I'm nobody. I'm just an Omega who—" The words caught in her throat. Who was rejected? Who was cast out? Who should be dead? "You are so much more than that." Lyra moved closer, her movements precise as a blade. "But first, you need food and proper shelter. Then we'll explain everything." Everything. Celeste looked around at the 10 warriors, at their unified purpose, at the way they all seemed to be waiting for something. What everything? Kieran extended his hand toward her, palm up, an offering rather than a command. "Come with us. Let us show you who you really are." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to be cautious, to remember that she was alone and vulnerable, and they were strangers, or no matter how they'd helped her. But something deeper than instinct, something that felt like recognition, like coming home, whispered, "Yes." Celeste took his hand. His skin was warm, calloused, steady. The moment their palms touched, a shock went through her, not painful like the bond with Damon, but right, like something clicking into place after being misaligned for too long. Kieran's eyes widened slightly, and she knew he'd felt it too. "Can you walk?" he asked softly. "I think so." With his help, she managed to stand, though her legs shook and her head swam. Rowan appeared on her other side, offering support without crowding. "It's not far," he assured her, "and I promise, everything will make sense soon." As they helped her toward the door, toward the winter sunlight and whatever answers waited beyond, Celeste caught sight of her reflection in a broken piece of mirror hanging on the barn wall. For just a moment, her eyes flashed silver. The Shadow Guard's sanctuary was carved into the mountain itself. They called it the Sanctum, a series of caves that had been expanded and modified over centuries into something halfway between fortress and home. Massive wooden doors marked the entrance, etched with symbols Celeste didn't recognize, but that made her wolf stir with interest. Inside, the caves opened into soaring chambers lit by a combination of natural skylights and what looked like phosphorescent moss growing in careful patterns along the walls. It was beautiful, warm, safe. "We've maintained this place for generations," Dante explained, as they led her through corridors carved smooth by time and hands. "Each guardian adds to it. I improves it. The kitchen is that way." He pointed left. "Bathing chambers through there, training grounds below." "How many of you are there?" Celeste asked. 10. Kieran glanced back at her. "There are always 10. No more, no less." "Why?" "You'll see." They brought her to a chamber that made her breath catch. It was circular, the walls covered in murals that depicted wolves in stunning detail, some in mid-transformation, others in full glory, all painted with a skill that made them seem alive. But it was the center of the room that drew her attention. A stone pedestal stood there, and on it, an open book. Not paper. The pages were some kind of treated hide, and the ink seemed to shimmer, as if recently applied, despite the dust that suggested centuries had passed since anyone had turned these pages. Elder runes covered every surface, but as Celeste drew closer, she realized she could read them. Not with her eyes, with something deeper, more instinctive. "How?" she whispered. "Because it's meant for you." Lyra's voice was gentle. "This is the Book of Prophecy. It's been here for over 3,000 years, waiting for the one who could read it." Kieran came to stand beside the pedestal, his expression solemn. There's a prophecy, Celeste. One that's guided the Shadow Guard for longer than any living memory. Would you like to hear it? She nodded, not trusting her voice. He began to read, and his voice transformed, taking on a cadence that suggested the words had been spoken exactly this way for millennia. When the moon bleeds silver and the bond breaks in pain, when power denied finds voice in rejection's reign, the matriarch will rise from the ashes of her fall, born of sorrow, forged in fury, the strongest of all. She will bear the ancient mark, eyes like the moon's own light. She will command the wild things, bend darkness to her right. 10 shall guard her, 10 shall serve, sworn to her side. And by her hand, the scattered packs will once again unite. She comes when hope is lost, when wolves forget their way. She comes to judge the worthy, to separate night from day. Neither Alpha nor Omega, but something far between. The matriarch returns, wolf sovereign, eternal queen. Silence fell like snow. Celeste stared at the book, at the words that seemed to pulse with their own light, and felt something crack open inside her chest. No, she said, shaking her head. That's not me. I'm nobody. I can't even shift anymore. You can't shift because your power was bound. Arya moved forward, or her red hair catching the light. Someone locked your wolf away when you were too young to remember. Locked you away. Who would... But even as she asked, Celeste knew. The way her parents had watched her. The guilt in their eyes. The refusal to help her even as she was exiled to her death. Your parents. Kieran's voice was kind, despite the harsh truth. They bound your power when you were an infant. We don't know all the details yet, but we can guess. They were afraid of what you would become. Afraid that, if the old families knew the prophecy was real, that the matriarch had been born, it would bring war to their doorstep. So they crippled me. The words tasted like ash. Made me weak. Made me Omega. They made you appear Omega, Lyra corrected. But you were never truly one of them. The binding couldn't last forever. Magic like that never does. It was already cracking. That's why you felt the mate bond with the Alpha, even though such bonds are impossible between Alphas and Omegas of that power disparity. Celeste's mind spun, trying to process it all. The rejection shattered the binding completely. Kieran's silver eyes blazed. Damon Blackthorne made the mistake of his life. He didn't just reject a mate. He set you free. As if responding to the words, something deep inside Celeste moved. Her wolf, which had been silent and distant since the rejection, suddenly surged forward with a force that made her gasp. But it wasn't her wolf. Not the small, weak thing she'd known her whole life. This was something vast. It's starting, Dante said urgently. Get her to the transformation chamber. Now. They half-carried, so half-guided her deeper into the sanctum, to a massive cavern with a vaulted ceiling that opened to the sky. The walls here were reinforced with strange metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Kieran carefully lowered her to the center of the room, and the guard backed away, forming a circle around her. What's happening? Celeste's voice shook as power built under her skin like pressure behind a dam. Your wolf is awakening. Kieran's voice seemed to come from very far away. The real one. The one you were always meant to be. Don't fight it. Let it come. The power exploded outward. Celeste screamed as energy ripped through her, but it wasn't pain. Or not just pain. It was overwhelming sensation, like every nerve in her body lighting up at once. Her bones began to shift, but not in the violent way she'd seen other transformations. They flowed, restructuring themselves with liquid grace. Her spine lengthened. Her muscles expanded. mass appearing from nowhere, as if the universe itself was pouring substance into her form. Fur erupted across her skin, not the gray or brown common to lower-ranking wolves, but pure white that gleamed silver in the light. Her senses exploded outward, suddenly able to hear heartbeats from the chambers above, to smell the storm clouds gathering 10 miles away, to see individual motes of dust floating in shafts of sunlight. And still she grew, larger than any beta, larger than any alpha. Magnificent, her wolf whispered, and for the first time, Celeste truly heard it, not as a separate entity, but as part of herself, when the part that had been locked away and suppressed and denied for 22 years. This is who we are. This is who we've always been. The transformation completed, and Celeste stood on 4 legs that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. She could feel the power thrumming through her new form, wild and vast and barely contained. When she looked down, she realized she was easily 3 times the size of a normal wolf. Maybe more. She turned her head to find the Shadow Guard, and every single one of them had dropped to one knee, heads bowed. "All hail the matriarch," Kieran said, and his voice held wonder. "The prophecy is fulfilled." Celeste, no, something more than Celeste now, threw back her head and howled. The sound shook the mountain. It rolled out across the wild lands, a declaration of power, of presence, so of a queen returned to her throne. Somewhere distant, she felt animals scattering in instinctive response, felt the earth itself seem to acknowledge her. And in her old Pax territory, in the Alpha's mansion where Daemon Blackthorn was probably celebrating his new union, she knew that he heard it, that he felt it in his bones, that some part of him recognized what he'd lost. Her eyes blazed silver, and for the first time in her life, Celeste Ashwood smiled with all her teeth. Let them come. Let them all come. She was done running, done hiding, done being anything less than what the moon goddess had always intended her to be. She was the matriarch, and the game had just begun. The next weeks passed in a blur of revelation and transformation. Kieran proved to be a patient teacher, now guiding Celeste through the intricacies of her new power with the calm authority of someone who'd been preparing for this moment his entire life. The Shadow Guard had been chosen, not born, he explained, but called, from various packs across the northern territories. Each had received dreams, visions, an undeniable pull toward the sanctum and the prophecy it guarded. "We've been searching for signs for decades," Lyra told her during a break in training. They sat in one of the sanctum's upper chambers, looking out over the snow-covered wild lands. Strange births, unusual power manifestations, anything that might indicate the matriarch had been born. But your parents' binding was thorough. You were completely hidden from us. Until I wasn't, Celeste said softly. Until the universe corrected itself. Lyra's ice-blue eyes held understanding. Daemon Blackthorn thought he was choosing power over destiny. He had no idea he was destiny's instrument. Learning to control her shifting had been the first challenge. Unlike before, when transformation had been impossible, now Celeste could shift at will. But the power involved was staggering. The first time she'd tried to shift back to human form, she'd accidentally shattered 3 stone pillars and created a small earthquake. "You're not just shifting form," Kieran had explained, helping her up from the rubble. "You're channeling power older than the packs themselves. It's going to take time to learn control." But she was learning. Day by day, shift by shift, she was mastering the vast strength that flowed through her. She could now transform smoothly, so could hold her wolf form for hours without strain, could even do partial shifts, claws without full transformation, enhanced senses without changing shape. Her wolf had become a constant presence in her mind, no longer separate, but integrated. They were one being now, one consciousness with two forms, and the clarity it brought was intoxicating. "We are whole," her wolf purred during one particularly successful training session. "We are as we were always meant to be." But power wasn't just about transformation. As the days passed, other abilities began to manifest. She discovered her empathic sense by accident, suddenly knowing exactly how Rowan felt when he thought about his deceased sister. The grief had washed over her with such intensity that she'd nearly collapsed, and it had taken Kieran's grounding presence to help her pull back. "That's a matriarch's gift," he'd said. "The ability to sense the emotional state of any wolf around you. It'll let you govern fairly, lead effectively. But you need to learn to shield, or you'll drown in everyone else's feelings." The healing came next. Dante had sliced his hand open during weapons training, and before anyone could grab bandages, Celeste had touched the wound and felt her power flow into him. The cut had sealed instantly, leaving nothing but smooth skin and a very startled warrior. "That's new," he'd said, flexing his hand in wonder. "That's terrifying," Celeste had countered, staring at her palm. "That's useful," Kieran had corrected with a slight smile. But perhaps the most unnerving ability was what Arya called the voice of command. It had manifested during a sparring session when Fiona and Finn had been about to strike each other with enough force to cause serious injury. Celeste had shouted, "Stop!" and they had, instantly, completely. Frozen mid-strike like statues, unable to move until she'd released them with conscious effort. "That's Alpha Command multiplied by about 1,000, Arya had said, eyeing her with new respect. "You just imposed your will on two of the strongest wolves in the Guard without even trying. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. That's the power of the matriarch. When you speak, wolves listen. When you command, they obey. It's not mind control. They could resist if they were strong enough, or if your command violated their core nature. But for most wolves, your will becomes law." The knowledge was both thrilling and terrifying. She could feel the power growing in her day by day, like a flower unfurling toward the sun. She was becoming something she'd never imagined, something the legends had promised, but she'd never dared to believe. And through it all, there was Kieran. He trained with her daily, pushed her to her limits, and then passed them, caught her when she fell, and celebrated when she succeeded. His scent of aged oak and winter snow had become as familiar as her own, his steady presence an anchor when the power threatened to overwhelm her. She caught him watching her sometimes, with an expression she couldn't quite name. Something fierce and protective and tender all at once. "Tell me about the Shadow Guard," she said one evening as they sat together in the sanctum's great hall. The others were scattered around the room, maintaining weapons, reading, or simply existing in the comfortable silence of those who'd become family. "How long have you been waiting?" "Personally, 35 years. Kieran's silver eyes reflected the firelight. "I was 10 when I had my first vision of you. Didn't understand it at the time. Just knew that I'd seen a white wolf with eyes like the moon, and that I was meant to protect her. The dreams continued as I got older, became clearer. I left my birth pack when I was 18 to find the sanctum." "That's a long time to wait for someone you'd never met. Not when you know she's worth waiting for." His voice was quiet, intense. "Every member of the Guard has their own story, their own calling. But we all knew we were waiting for you." Something warm unfurled in Celeste's chest. "The prophecy mentioned 10 shall serve, but you're not servants. Tom, you're warriors, friends." "Family," Lyra corrected from across the room, not looking up from the blade she was sharpening. That's what we are now. What we were always meant to be. And it was true. In these few short weeks, the Shadow Guard had become more of a family than Celeste had ever known. They trained her, protected her, made her laugh, challenged her, accepted every part of her without reservation or condition. Rowan taught her tracking and wilderness survival, his gentle humor making even the hardest lessons bearable. Aurea showed her combat techniques, her fierce grin promising no mercy and all the respect in the world. The twins, Finn and Fiona, became her sparring partners and confidants, their easy banter filling the sanctum with warmth. Marcus, the quiet giant, appointed himself her unofficial bodyguard, with his massive presence always a few steps behind her. Dante shared knowledge of the ancient texts, helping her understand the history of the matriarchs who'd come before. Cassia and Theron ran the sanctum with efficient grace, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Bren, the youngest besides Rowan, brought a light-hearted energy that kept the mood from becoming too heavy. And Kieran was there through it all. Teacher, guardian, friend, and something more that neither of them had quite named yet. She could feel the connection between them growing stronger, but it was different from the bond with Damon. That had been forced, fated, a decree from the moon goddess that neither had chosen. This was a choice they made every day, to trust, to rely on, to simply be together. The matriarch doesn't have fated mates, Kieran had explained one night when she'd asked. She chooses her consort, if she chooses at all. The power is too great, too all-consuming, to be bound by fate. Her heart must be her own. And if she wanted to choose? Celeste had asked, her heart pounding. Kieran's silver eyes had held hers, and a slow smile had crossed his scarred face. Then her choice would be honored, celebrated. Whatever and whoever she wanted, she could have. The implication hung between them, tantalizing and terrifying, and exactly right. But before anything could be decided, before they could explore what was growing between them, there was still the matter of the past to address. 1 month after the rejection, a letter arrived. It was delivered by a rogue courier who'd heard rumors of the White Wolf in the mountains and had been handsomely paid to find her. The envelope was sealed with the Silverpine Pack crest, and inside was a message in her mother's handwriting. Celeste, if this finds you, and the moon goddess knows you have every right to burn it unread, I need you to know the truth. Your father and I bound your power when you were 3 days old. A witch, a powerful one, told us what you would become. The matriarch, the one who would shake the foundations of pack society. She said powerful families would hunt you, kill you, do anything to prevent the prophecy from being fulfilled. We thought we were protecting you. Thought if we hid your power, made you small and unremarkable, you could live a normal life. We were fools. Everything I did, or to every time I failed to stand up for you, every moment I let them treat you as lesser, it was to maintain the binding, to keep you safe. But I see now that safety without freedom is just another kind of prison. Damon realized what he'd done. The pack is fracturing. Some call you dead. Others whisper about the White Wolf. And dark forces are gathering. The old families have heard the rumors. You don't owe us anything. I know that. But please, be careful. Be safe. And know that we loved you enough to break you, which was the cruelest kind of love there is. Your mother, Alara Ashwood Celeste, read the letter 3 times, feeling emotions war within her. Anger, betrayal, understanding, grief. Kieran found her in the great hall, staring at the paper as if it held answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. "What do you want to do?" he asked simply. "I don't know." Celeste looked up at him. "They hurt me, crippled me, Let me suffer my entire life because they were afraid. But they also thought they were protecting me. Both things can be true. Kieran sat beside her, his solid presence grounding. People hurt the ones they love all the time, often for the best reasons. Whether you forgive them, when you forgive them, if you forgive them, that's entirely your choice. What would you do? I'd remember that forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. About not letting their fear and choices keep poisoning your life. His hand covered hers, warm and steady. But that's easy to say when they're not my parents. The heart doesn't always follow logic. Celeste folded the letter carefully and tucked it away. I'm not ready to see them. Maybe not for a long time. But I'm glad to know the truth. That's enough for now. Kieran squeezed her hand. The rest can wait. As if summoned by discussion of the past, trouble arrived 3 days later in the form of a scout. He came at dawn, bloody and terrified, collapsing at the sanctum's entrance. Marcus carried him inside, and Celeste used her newfound healing gift to seal his wounds while he gasped out his message. Silverpine Pack, he managed between desperate breaths. They're coming. 20 warriors, maybe more. Damon Blackthorn leads them. They seek the White Wolf. They're half a day behind me. The Shadow Guard exchanged glances. Let them come, Arya said, her smile all teeth. Are you sure? Rowan looked concerned. We could disappear, go deeper into the wilds, no more running. Celeste stood, and her voice carried the weight of her new power. I've run enough. If Damon wants to find me, let him find me. It's time he learned what he rejected. Kieran's eyes gleamed with approval. Then we prepare for war. They came as the sun reached its zenith, a force of 23 wolves moving in perfect formation through the wild lands. At their head rode Damon Blackthorn in his alpha form, a massive gray wolf with the amber eyes that had once made Celeste's heart race. Now, watching from the sanctum's upper terrace as they approached, she felt nothing but cold assessment. The Shadow Guard stood around her in a loose formation, ready but not threatening. They'd agreed to let her handle this, to intervene only if necessary. This confrontation was hers to command. Damon shifted as he reached the sanctum's outer markers, his form flowing from wolf to man with the practiced ease of an experienced alpha. He wore formal armor, ceremonial but functional, and his face bore the harsh lines of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. Behind him, his warriors shifted as well. Celeste recognized many of them, pack members she'd grown up with, who'd ignored or mocked her throughout her life. And there, near the back with murder in her green eyes, was Seraphina. I seek the White Wolf, Damon's voice carried clearly across the distance. I seek Celeste Ashwood. Then you have found her. Celeste stepped forward to the terrace's edge, and she let herself shift. Not fully, but enough. Her eyes flared silver. Her canines lengthened slightly. Power radiated from her in waves that made several of Damon's warriors take involuntary steps backward. Hello, Damon. Did you miss me? His face went white as snow. That's impossible, he breathed. You're an Omega. You can't. I was never an Omega. Celeste's voice was calm, conversational, backed by so much power it made the air shimmer. I was bound, crippled, made small so that small minds wouldn't fear me. But you fixed that, didn't you? When you rejected me, you broke the binding. You set me free. So thank you, Damon. Thank you for being exactly the arrogant, short-sighted fool the prophecy required. Prophecy. But recognition was dawning in his amber eyes, and with it, dawning horror. The matriarch has returned, Kieran said quietly, stepping up beside Celeste. And you, Damon Blackthorn, rejected your queen. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Seraphina laughed, high and sharp and slightly unhinged. This is ridiculous. She's an Omega playing dress-up with rogue wolves. Damon, let me handle this. She shifted before anyone could stop her, her wolf form lean and vicious, built for speed and lethality. With a snarl that echoed off the mountains, she launched herself at the terrace, covering the 100 yards between them in seconds. Celeste didn't move. Seraphina's wolf hit an invisible wall 20 feet away, slamming into it with enough force to crack bone. She fell to the snow, dazed and whimpering. "Kneel," Celeste said quietly, and her voice of command rolled out like thunder. Seraphina's wolf fought it. Celeste could see the desperate struggle in her eyes, the way her muscles locked as she tried to resist. But the power was too much. Slowly, inevitably, Seraphina's front legs bent, and she lowered herself to the snow in submission. "Release her," Damon's voice shook. "Please, You what?" Celeste turned her silver gaze on him, and he flinched. "You come to my territory, bring warriors to threaten me. Let your chosen mate attack, and now you plead for mercy? I didn't know. You didn't want to know." She descended from the terrace, walking toward him with measured steps. The Shadow Guard moved with her, and as they did, they shifted. Damon's warriors gasped as the transformations revealed the truth. These weren't normal wolves. They were massive, ancient, their eyes glowing with supernatural light. Dire wolves, every one of them, sworn guardians of the matriarch. Kieran alone matched Celeste's massive size, his dark fur streaked with silver, his scarred face somehow even more imposing in wolf form. But the others ranged from slightly smaller to what would normally be considered impossibly large, and every single one of them radiated the kind of power that came from centuries of selective calling. "You rejected me because I was weak," Celeste continued, stopping 10 feet from Damon. "Because I couldn't fight, couldn't command, couldn't bring strength to your pack. Look at me now, Damon. Look at what you lost." She shifted. The transformation was controlled, graceful, but no less impressive for its smoothness. Her wolf form towered over every wolf present except Kieran. Her silver-white fur seemed to glow in the sunlight, and her eyes blazed with power that made lesser wolves avert their gaze. She stood before them, the matriarch made manifest, and let them see exactly what their alpha had rejected. One by one, Damon's warriors dropped to their knees. Even in their human forms, they couldn't resist the pull of her presence, the sheer weight of power that demanded submission. Only Damon himself remained standing, and that was clearly costing him everything he had. "Mercy," he finally managed, his voice breaking. "I was wrong. I was a fool. I rejected the goddess's greatest gift because I was afraid of what the other alphas would think. But I see now. I see what I lost. Please, Celeste. Mercy." Celeste shifted back to human form, and the guard did the same, moving to flank her. She looked at Damon Blackthorne, the wolf who'd rejected her, who'd cast her out to die, who'd chosen ambition over destiny, and felt her anger crystallize into something colder, harder, more permanent. "You want mercy?" she asked quietly. "Then hear my judgment." Her voice took on the resonance of command, making every word a decree that would be obeyed. "You, Damon Blackthorne, are no longer alpha of the Silver Pine Pack. Your father will resume leadership until a proper successor can be chosen by pack vote. You will serve your pack as a warrior. Nothing more, nothing less. You will train the young, protect the weak, and learn humility." Damon's face twisted with protest, but no sound came out. The command held him silent. "Seraphina Redwood, you are stripped of your rank. You will leave Silverpine territory and spend 1 year among the rogue wolves, learning what it means to survive without status, without protection, without pack. If you survive, you may petition to return." Seraphina's human form had reappeared, and she was weeping openly now, clawing at the snow. Now, as for the rest of you, Celeste's silver eyes swept across the kneeling warriors. You have two choices. Return to your pack and spread word of what you witnessed here. Tell them the matriarch has returned. Tell them the old ways are restored. Tell them that any pack who wishes sanctuary, who wishes to be judged fairly and governed justly, need only send word. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Or you may stay. Swear yourselves to my service and become part of something greater than any single pack. Build with me a new order, where rank is earned through character rather than birth, where strength is measured in compassion as well as combat. The choice is yours. Silence. Then, incredibly, one of the warriors spoke. I would stay, matriarch. It was Marcus, the beta who'd apologized when they'd exiled her. I would serve, if you'll have me. And I, said another. And I. By the time the declaration stopped, half of Daemon's war party had pledged themselves to her service. The rest rose slowly, backing away toward the trees, their eyes wide with awe and terror. Daemon remained kneeling in the snow, his amber eyes locked on hers. You could have died, he said hoarsely. I sent you out to die. I did die, Celeste replied. The weak Omega you rejected died in that blizzard. I was reborn from her ashes. And I need to thank you for that, Daemon. Because if you'd accepted me, I would have spent my life making you stronger while remaining small myself. You gave me the gift of freedom, even if you didn't mean to. She turned to Kieran, who'd remained a silent, steady presence throughout. Escort the departing wolves to the border. Make sure they leave peacefully. As you command. He moved toward Daemon, and for a moment their eyes met. Alpha to Guardian, the wolf who'd rejected the matriarch and the wolf who'd waited for her. She was always too good for you, Kieran said quietly, so only Daemon could hear. I'm glad you were fool enough to let her go. Then the Shadow Guard and the new recruits were ushering the remaining Silverpine wolves away, leaving Celeste standing alone in the snow. She looked up at the sky, at the pale sun struggling through winter clouds, and felt something settle in her chest. Not peace. She wasn't sure she'd ever have true peace again. Not with power this vast, this demanding, but purpose. Clarity. The bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. We are home, were her wolf whispered. And for the first time in her life, Celeste agreed. 3 months later, the sanctum had been transformed. What had once been a hidden refuge for 10 was now a thriving community of over 60 wolves, with more arriving every week. Word had spread through the territories like wildfire. The matriarch has returned, and she offers sanctuary to any who seek it. They came from everywhere. Omegas fleeing abuse. Betas searching for purpose. Even a few alphas who were tired of the constant political maneuvering and endless challenges. Celeste judged each one fairly, using her empathic sense to see past lies and facades, accepting those who came with honest hearts and turning away those who sought only power. The sanctum expanded daily, new chambers carved from the mountain, new buildings erected in the valley below. A proper training ground had been established, along with a healing ward, a great hall large enough for communal meals, and living quarters for families. Because wolves had started bringing their mates, their pups, their elderly. They were building not just a pack, but a society, something that hadn't existed since the first matriarch had fallen over 3,000 years ago. Celeste governed with a firm but compassionate hand, guided by the Shadow Guard and her own growing understanding of her role. She established new laws. Omegas could challenge for rank. Alphas could be deposed by pack vote. Mates could reject bonds if there was abuse. Pups were sacred, protected by all. Those who broke the laws faced her judgment, and her justice was swift and decisive. She had no patience for cruelty, for those who used strength to terrorize the weak. But she also offered redemption, second chances, paths forward for those willing to change. "You're building an empire," Lyra observed one evening as they surveyed the growing community from the sanctum's highest point. "I'm building a home," Celeste corrected. "A place where wolves can be safe, can be themselves, can thrive. That's what the matriarch is meant to be. Not a tyrant, but a protector." "And a queen," Kieran added, coming up behind them. His hand found hers naturally now, a touch they'd both stopped questioning. "Don't forget that part." 3 months ago, she would have protested the title. Now, she wore it with pride. She and Kieran had grown closer day by day, and what had started as respect and attraction had deepened into something profound. He wasn't her fated mate, couldn't be, according to the old laws, but he was her chosen one, the one she trusted above all others, the one whose presence steadied her when the power threatened to overwhelm, the one who made her laugh when the weight of leadership grew too heavy. "The representatives from the Eastern Pacts arrive tomorrow," she said, changing the subject before the warmth in her chest could make her do something foolish, like kiss him in front of Lyra. "We need to be ready." "You're ready." Kieran's confidence was absolute. "They're coming to see if the stories are true. Let them see the matriarch in all her glory, and they'll bend the knee like everyone else." And they did. The next day, as 5 alphas and their entourages approached the sanctum, Celeste met them in her throne room, a chamber they'd carved specifically for formal occasions. She sat on a throne of pale stone, the shadow guard arrayed around her, power radiating from her in waves. The alphas knelt. One by one, they pledged their pacts to her governance, accepting her as the supreme authority in the territories. Some did so readily, relief evident in their sense. Others struggled, pride warring with pragmatism. But all of them submitted, because she was the matriarch, and her time had come. 6 months after the rejection, Celeste stood on the sanctum's terrace and watched the blood moon rise. It hung huge and red in the sky, an omen the old stories claimed heralded great change. Good or evil, the stories never quite agreed. Just change. "You're thinking too loudly." Kieran's voice came from behind her, followed by his arms wrapping around her waist. She leaned back into his warmth, grateful for his presence. "The blood moon means something is coming," she said softly. "The elders in the community are worried. They say the last time the moon bled red, the ancient evil stirred. Then we'll face them together." His breath was warm against her ear. "You, me, the guard, and every wolf who's sworn to your service. Whatever comes, we're ready." "Am I, though?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Ready, I mean. It's only been 6 months since I couldn't even shift, since I was nobody." "You were never nobody." Kieran turned her to face him, his silver eyes serious. "You were always who you are now. They just couldn't see it. And yes, you're ready. I've watched you judge territorial disputes, mediate conflicts, heal the wounded, train the young. You're everything the prophecy promised, and more. Because I have you." She reached up to trace the scar on his face, the mark of some long-ago battle. "All of you. I couldn't do this alone." "You'll never have to." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "That's what family means. What love means." The word hung between them, spoken aloud for the first time. "Love." Celeste's heart thundered. "Love," Kieran confirmed. "I told you, the matriarch chooses her consort. I've been waiting for you to choose. But if you want my opinion," his smile was soft, vulnerable in a way she rarely saw, "you should choose me. I'm devastatingly handsome, an excellent fighter, and I make a decent soup." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "Those are compelling arguments. I also happen to be completely, helplessly in love with you." His expression turned serious. "And I have been, since the moment I found you dying in that barn. Maybe since the first vision, when I was 10 years old. I'm yours, Celeste. I always have been." "Then yes." The answer came easily, naturally, as right as breathing. "I choose you, Kieran Ashford. Now, and always." When he kissed her, power flared between them, not the forced bond of fate, but something they'd built together, forged from choice and trust and time. The matriarch and her consort, the prophecy fulfilled, the new order established. Behind them, the blood moon continued its rise, casting crimson light across the sanctum. Somewhere in the shadows, ancient evils might be stirring. Somewhere beyond the territories, new challenges were certainly gathering. But tonight, in this moment, Celeste Ashwood stood wrapped in the arms of the wolf she loved, surrounded by the family she'd found, governing the community she'd built from nothing. She'd started as an Omega, powerless and alone. She'd been rejected, cast out, left to die. And from those ashes, she'd risen as the matriarch, stronger than any alpha, wiser than the elders, more powerful than the legends had dared imagine. The moon goddess worked in mysterious ways, her wolf whispered with satisfaction. Indeed she did. And so Celeste's journey from rejected Omega to matriarch queen reached its first chapter's close. She'd transformed from victim to survivor to sovereign, learning that true strength comes not from the status we're born into, but from the character we choose to build. The bonds of fate can break, but the bonds of choice, those forged in fire and tested by time, those can last forever. What happens when destiny is denied? Sometimes it simply finds another way. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and second chances, let me know in the comments below. Who was your favorite member of the Shadow Guard? What do you think the blood moon portends? And most importantly, should I continue Celeste's story? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss when we explore what ancient evil the blood moon has awakened, and how the matriarch will face her greatest challenge yet. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next chapter.